Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this today's CRM Convo Show. Wherever you are on your own screen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome our dear and respected guests. We encourage our audience to participate in the conversation and utilizing the chat opportunity in your social media channels to raise questions, comment on what we discussed today, as we are very happy that we have with us Ray Gerber and Mark Smith. I will give you a short intro about these charming gentlemen, which are extremely knowledgeable and had their reputation in the competitive environment, each in another corner of the market, but going for a topic which is a real cool driver, which came to founding the Institute for Journey Management. The Institute for Journey Management, Ray is a co-founder and founder of the Journey Centric CX, where he helps enterprises operationalize customer journeys to drive measurable value. You know, those stuff with the KPIs and the ROI, it's always a tricky thing. So I'm grateful that there are some very knowledgeable chaps running around and discovering and help you to discover with their over 25 years of experience in the area of Ray, including leadership roles at Qualtrics, Thunderhead, acquired by Medallia, Pegasystems, and Cordiant. And Mark, from his corner, has been in a boutique consulting business, Journey Smith, and helping companies drive value from journey technology. Now, having said this, and that Raymond has been in the forefront of the journey orchestration, analytics, and AI-driven engagement, he holds also 5 patents, is Journey Analytical Customer Experience Innovation chap, and has guided multiple SaaS organizations through successful acquisitions. And he has been earlier with us. And from that shows, we know that he is into techniques very much and that he can give you a lot of advice. Now, Mark, as being his co-founder in the Institute and driving forward value from Journey Technology, has over 30 years of experience in customer analytics and engagement, including leadership roles at Kitewheel, CSG, Portray Software, and Quadstone, guiding a series of software startups to over 100 million in exits. That's combined a reputation, let's say a knowledge base and a powerhouse, which I would love to get you some more information from. So, gentlemen, what did I miss in your introduction? What would you like to add? And welcome.
Thank you, Ralph.
There it blushes already.
Very pleased to be here. Maybe I the one big thing you missed in the intro was that, and it was in there. It was just sort of between the lines that Ray and I were bitter rivals and head-on competitors for at least 10 years. Yeah. So when Ray was leading the product vision at Thunderhead, I had founded and started the Kitewheel business, and these two companies were often and regularly seen as the two leaders in the customer journey orchestration space. And so Ray and I knew each other as head-on rivals and big market competitors. So we didn't do a lot of calls like this where we were both on at the same time.
We did calls like this, but at different times.
Sometimes it takes a retirement.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that all changed. That all changed about 6-8 months ago.
That's marvelous, because such an valuable knowledge, and also the intention to go to the public, write about it, create some stuff such as what was the side of that you became now more a pair of knowledgeable, combined powerhouse chaps instead of competitors.
Yeah.
What was the driver for you to found the Institute for Journey Management?
Yeah.
And tell us why you feel it is important to have an institute in this area. What were your drivers and the motivation?
So in a funny way, Ralph, I think one word is frustration.
Oh,
frustration. We, Ray and I both did well at our two companies, Kitewheel and Thunderhead. Went through very nice acquisitions and off to become part of much bigger companies. But I think we both felt that this marketplace for journeys was struggling and not as big as it should be. We've both seen many companies get great value out of using journeys the right way and deploying, whether it's journey analytics, journey orchestration, journey management. But not enough companies were doing it. And that was a puzzle to both of us. All right. When we see the value that can be delivered, what is it that's kind of holding so many companies back and holding the market back? And getting together and kind of sharing that feeling and finding out that we both felt kind of the same about the market. What could we do about it? What could we do about it as kind of now independence? And that's where the idea of founding this institute came from. Could we create an independent body that's there for the value of the whole of the industry that can help companies understand what's possible with journey management and almost be here as a learning resource, an educational resource for business leaders and practitioners, but also as an aid for the industry itself to get all of the participants to work together in a more collaborative way, to set standards and share definitions, to remove some of the confusion, which we feel is one of the big reasons that many companies don't really move forward in the customer journey space, is because they're actually a little bit confused what it is. And they're certainly confused of how to get to the results. And so the Institute is here to kind of, as a vehicle whereby the industry can come together, practitioners, business leaders, technology companies, consultancies, and start kind of sharing in a community what's worked for people, what's not worked for people, educate more and more people of what's possible. One of the things we're going to do is have a value benchmarking offering whereby we'll have real validated examples of the value delivered by journey management in all sorts of different industries, so that business leaders can see what's possible. Yeah. And that we hope will spark their interest in, well, so how do I get there? How do I get to that what's possible that I've seen other companies achieve? How can I get there? And we've been very busy over the last 6 months putting together a whole set of assets, so materials, methodologies, frameworks, and guidelines, as well as all these case studies, to help be a source of education for the broader market.
Maybe I can add to that. I think the other thing that really got us together, besides frustration, besides disappointment, was a passion. I think we both have a passion for what we believe customer journey management is, and that customers don't buy touch points, they pursue outcomes, and I think believing the value that it can bring in helping brands and organizations do what we call journey transformation, is what pulled us together. And it's interesting, when we had our first meeting of like-minded people in Amsterdam, it was immediately everybody believed in its potential, and everybody like Mark and I was frustrated and disappointed with the lack of adoption for many reasons, and many of the vendors and us are to blame for this. But that's why we try to put like-minded people together to saying, how do we overcome this? How do we actually are standing on the other side of the fence? How do we break that wall down to make sure that we make it easier for brands to get the value that we believe they can get from adopting the concepts of journeys, the journey transformation, journey-led value management, etc. So,
Up to speed and the rubber on the road.
exactly. So,
ties into what Mark said a little earlier. So how to do it right, or there is a derivation of value if done right. So I like this disclaimer. So because it indicates that there are lots, not only one, but lots of ways to do it wrong. So what do you see besides not really adopting it is going wrong, or what are businesses doing wrong?
Well, one of the starting points of doing it wrong is the confusion that exists around what a journey is, right? And just the word journey gets used so broadly these days. Actually, certainly outside of business and technology, it's amazing how often the concept of a journey is being used just to describe kind of living life, right? And that, of course, that connects to a real journey for a customer of an organization. It is them living their life, trying to get to their personal goals, and at various points they touch various businesses as they go down that journey. But a lot of times when you talk to business leaders, they perceive journeys as a marketing activity, and that word has got kind of taken over by a lot of the big marketing platforms, and what I used to call campaigns, a series of communications that are very much the business's plan and the business's thinking and the business's desires to communicate offers to customers, now gets called a journey. And of course, it's the wrong way around. The real journey is centers around the customer and helping the customer and providing great experience for the customer as they are doing their things and fitting that in with all the things that the business is looking to do. And that's a much more complex undertaking than just planning 8 marketing emails to go one after the other, 7 days apart or whatever, or trigger based or whatever, but they're all outbound communications. A real journey is a two-way thing between the business and the customer, and it happens at a cadence that usually the customer drives. The business can interfere every now and again and try and prompt and nudge and help, but that's very different from simply scheduling outbound communications. And that's one example of doing it the wrong way. All right, is thinking about this I'm a business and I've got these offers to make and these products to sell, and I'm just out there pushing, and that's a marketing thing. And that's one of the big confusions that we're hoping to resolve with our education, is what's really meant by journey management as a customer-centric activity, because that's where the real value is, right? That's where the real value comes from. The value from a marketing journey is an incremental, fractions of percentage points or 1 or 2 percentage points optimization. Taking a truly customer-centric view, we're talking tens of percentage points, if not multiplication factors of value to a business by truly turning around and transforming to be centered on the customer.
I think I can add to that. I think another big mistake organizations make is thinking of journeys as tactic versus strategic.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that tactic equals journey mapping. And we've seen all the negative information around people creating journey maps. Suddenly, 3 months, everybody's journey maps, and then a year later, those journey maps are still on the wall and nothing has changed in the organization, versus seeing it as a mechanism to transform the organization. And therefore, we talk about journey-led transformation. And I think as part of that is also, Mark talked a little bit of the confusion created by the journey vendors themselves, but also confusion between journey management, customer experience management, jobs to be done, and I think, we are trying to find ways to make sure that we don't create silos, but all of these are essentially need to work together to produce outcomes and deliver value for organizations on their strategy to transform. So I like to talk about, say what's the relationship between these three things? For me, job to be done is the intent. It is why the journey exists. Customer journey management is the path, and therefore I talk about it as the end-to-end flow that produces outcomes. And what is customer experience? It is the proof. It is what is the sentiment and service quality as conveyed by the customers. And I think, so even though we call ourselves the Institute for Journey Management, we are not creating a silo just talking about journeys, but from day one, when we talk about created the manifesto, it is where does journey sit within the ecosystem of all customer-focused solutions, job to be done, CRM, next best action decisioning, business process management, loyalty. So I think, again, our intent is for the Institute, to exist to make these disciplines teachable, auditable, and scalable, so companies can stop guessing and start running, journey-led transformation kind of like an operating system. So.
Now, how do these three main topics correlate with each other or cooperate with each other? You said journey management, you said customer experience, you said job to be done. So one is the outcome, the experience.
Job to be done is the outcome. That's why a customer engages with a brand to achieve a need, fulfill a need, and what is their intent for engaging with BMW or Mercedes or Wells Fargo. Okay. To do that, the brand needs to take them on a path, on a journey. And obviously those journeys are happening across touch points, but it's important that touch points only matter when they move the job forward. Okay. So really the customer journey management is the method to fulfill the job to be done from the customer perspective. And then you continually need to focus on, am I doing the right things? Is my customers achieving the intent, their need, fulfilling in the right way? And I think that's critically where CX comes in terms of being able to continuously along the journey assess the sentiment that is creating, that the touch points are creating, the journey itself is creating, and what is perception of the customer, as it relates to the service quality. Paul Greenberg always talks about you have to make sure that every engagement with a customer provides sufficient value for them to want to have another engagement with you. So,
yeah. One of my common regular sayings is that I like to talk about customer experience rather than CX, because I think for so many people, CX has become this almost sort of side function inside a business. And by talking about the actual words customer experience, you have a better chance of sparking recognition and attention and interest from the range of business leaders who need to be involved in truly centering a company around the customer. This journey that Ray talks about touches so many different parts of the business. I was on a call just last week doing an interview with a CXO in a big financial firm. There's 22 leaders in that business who are involved with defining processes around the customer journey. It's a huge undertaking to do this right. And journeys often get put into the CX department, and maybe they get stuck in a mapping world there. Ralph, I saw you nodding to what Ray was saying about the the idea of that static map that kind of never gets put into action. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, there are action tools in the journey world. Journey orchestration systems are all about action, but are they connected to the strategy in the map? And that's one of these internal things inside the journey marketplace, where we need more cooperation and collaboration between those different vendors to make it more obvious they're supposed to work together, not compete, right? Because they each have a role to play in the bigger picture of journey management. But to come back to your question, Thomas, I think that bigger picture is getting journeys right allows the concept of great customer experience to get connected right through the business and not be off on one side or stuck in a silo. It's only by using journeys, the concept of journeys, and centering around the customer, that a business can truly have all of its operating points thinking customer experience, and doing what's necessary, which is working together to connect the dots and actually help break down those barriers that the customer doesn't see. Customers on their jobs to be done track and don't care about and shouldn't see any of these internal barriers. And journey management really is the discipline that will allow the business to essentially have them removed, because everyone cares about the customer experience and works towards that goal.
Now, let me play devil's advocate, please. One of my favorite roles. Yanking chains, throwing wrenches. So this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Customer experience, or CX department, CX practitioners, seemingly all have the same problem. They don't care much about measurable outcomes. They seem to see as the experience as an outcome in itself, as a value in itself, which may or may not be right in private life, but in business life, it probably isn't. Mm-hmm. And so far from looking at what businesses are doing with journeys, there seems to be a similar thought. Mm-hmm. How do you address that? I mean, a journey it's nice to have a journey. It's also probably nice to have a prescriptive journey that ring fences and guardrails my client into exactly that way I want them to go, instead of where and how they want to go.
Yeah.
Which makes them have an experience, and which may or may not have business value after all.
Yeah, and to be honest,
you kind of know. Sorry, Mark.
You go right.
Quickly say something. You remember Phil Benville from Thunderhead? He came up with this crazy good, simple explanation. The massive difference between a managed customer journey and a customer managed journey, and I think that, unfortunately, many organizations and technologies that are out there, big names that are building journey management solutions, are really building what I call managed customer journeys, where the customer is driven through concepts, campaigns, journeys, whatever they call it, through a path that the brand believes is relevant to the customer. Where and I think the excitement for me is around how Gen AI and the explosion of AI is really enabling the concept of the customer managed journey to become to fruition without 5 or 6 years of investments in ML and AI technologies, because it learns so much around people's behavior. So that's why one of the reasons I'm still around, because I'm excited about how it is changing the world. And I believe Mark and I would agree, if we only had vibe coding capabilities 10 years ago or 15 years ago when we started, and we had LLMs, how much less the companies would have had to spend to build proper, valuable solutions for customers. So, that's kind of my insert there, Mark. Go ahead. So,
absolutely.
I love that picture. Yeah,
absolutely. And sorry, Ralph, go on.
It's also that a wall is as patient as the map placed on the wall. There is no action. And if you describe it like customer managed or managed customer. Managed customer looks like a travel agency getting you into a plane, getting you from A to B, and then throwing you through a defined, precise route they want you to travel, not what your intention was to discover the country or the landscapes and all that. And that is a real game changer.
Yeah. So, I think going back to the idea of frustration, this, the fact that the CX departments don't get this is kind of, in a way, that's the definition of the problem that the market has got, and that we're trying to address. So frustrating that the group that's supposed to care about the customer experience seems to do so little in terms of taking action to improve it. And it's funny you say, Thomas, about they have a value problem, right? These CX departments, and it's certainly, I mean, I honestly think it's the hottest topic of conversation in our industry this year, is this whole thing about the value piece of delivering value and how to deliver value. If you certainly maybe I've got a bit of a weird LinkedIn feed, but certainly in my LinkedIn feed, the amount of comments that are about failing to deliver value, and that the new CX is about talking the language of the CFO and talking the language of business value. So it's just like, it's kind of feels like it's everywhere. And my core belief is journey management is actually the answer to that question. It's by implementing journey management and doing something about all of this knowledge you've got in the CX department that, too often is trapped inside survey responses and metrics tracking, instead of making a difference and doing something that really is customer centric. And I believe, and Ray believes, and the Institute believes, that it's journey management is the answer to that question, which is why we have such a focus on the value piece and all these value case studies, and something we call journey-led value management. It's by implementing journeys that the business can deliver value, right? Or the business can create value, because by getting centered around the customer and doing the things that they're looking for and making it easy and helpful, you'll do more business. You'll bring those customers back more. They'll tell all those good things that we know that many years ago would have been called CRM. It's a journey discipline that allows you to start implementing those things as real living processes inside the business. And one of the things we're trying to do, in a way, is a big wake-up call for those practitioners who can't get over that, can't jump that chasm to taking action. And big part of our education materials are encouraging them to do that, because it can seem like an impossible task. I've got to get the whole business aligned. I've got to get every piece of data together about the customer. I've got to have it all perfect. These journeys are incredibly complicated. Or our approach is one step at a time. By implementing pieces of good customer-centric process, you can start making incremental changes and kind of prove what's possible and expand and grow from there. And we have a kind of exec education materials are all around that kind of step-by-step process of learning and implementing a new way of getting customer-centric. So there's probably a long answer to your question, Thomas, but
well, we have the time.
Excellent.
Yeah, and maybe going back to the earlier level of frustration with Mark and myself. Mark, you mentioned frustration, and I think Mark fortunately less than me, because he sold Kitewheel to CSG, that is making it a valuable asset within the company because they have a different approach. Okay, where Thunderbird was sold to Medallia, where it seems to be dying.
Hmm.
Usermind was sold to Qualtrics, where it seems to be dying. And Genesys bought one, seemed to be dying. And yes, some of it related to technical limitations of the platforms that was oversold to those vendors when they bought them. I think the biggest frustration is maybe on them more than us. Is obviously they bought it because they believed in it, like Mark and I do, and like we all do, the value of journey management as it relates to transformation and customer centricity. But they underestimated the impact of acquiring such platforms in terms of how you need to sell differently. In CX, you sell to a small team, small to one person, two people, three people, very isolated. When you sell journey management, you have to sell to the organization. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I think, I think that's why these organizations are really struggling. They know they need it, but they've also been so fortunate. If you look at the rise of CX companies, the Qualtrics is where they were 13, 14 years ago. Ryan had just started Qualtrics, and now it's been multiply sold to SAP, went live, went public, went private, billions and billions of dollars, where you've never seen that anywhere in the journey space, and I think the problem is that those type of companies has been fortunately lucky to sell easily, and I think the struggle for them is how do we bring this platform that we know is the future, because they all believe it's the future and they've said it, that's why they spend money on it. But it's not as easy to sell. It's not as easy to deploy. And what's interesting is what I very quickly learned by going into the CX space after the Thunderbird acquisition is very little of CX is focused on unit economics. Very little of CX is tied to ROI value. And why? Because CX is focused on touch points that optimizes locally, where journeys optimize globally. And I think, so I think maybe as part of the Institute as well is maybe the role that the Institute can play with the founders and the people that we're going to bring in is how do we help educate organizations and vendors alike to be able to understand it is complex, it's hard, but it has long-term value. Don't give up so quickly. Think of it as a transformation exercise rather than as a one-time thing that is one and done. So
it's a bit of a detour now. I believe we are talking to the same founder of a company that does, well, voice of the customer and has a simple but fairly decent journey mapping functionality. Besides of it being quite a journey to implement journey management, journey orchestration, journey analytics functionalities for them, why do you think that they are also not seeing the value that lies in having a journey management, a comprehensive journey management solution?
I think we touch on the beginning when you talk about outcomes. I mean, there's where in journey mapping you have a static outcome expectation, but it's static, and then you go to CX or voice of the customer, massive gap in the middle. And I think Mark and I know the cost. I would say 80% of the cost for us to develop the solutions we did was based on the concept of proper orchestration. That's why the Pegasystems is so successful with next best action decisioning, because it's so powerful and it delivers the value. And I think that when you look at, and I think I know what you're talking about, Thomas. I might be wrong, but I think I know what you're talking about. Is if they don't invest in proper orchestration capabilities that go beyond measuring satisfaction, but to drive behavioral change. Okay, I think it's a subset of journey management that will never deliver value. Okay, so again, it comes back to the beginning. You have to understand the intent of the customer. You have to have a mechanism to understand how do people get there, what are the most proper path, exciting paths that gets them there, and then measure how satisfied they are at the end. But if you don't have that mechanism to help them along the way to achieve their intent a need in a satisfied manner. Journey mapping means nothing. It helps you design solutions that are static. And in CX itself helps nothing because it looks at individual touch points and doesn't really understand the overall customer experience.
Well, I probably use journey management in a little wider fashion. So this means making them dynamic, optimizing them, analyzing them. So for me, management is the comprehensive word. But they seem to be stuck in mapping and don't want to get out of there. Or, well, they probably don't want to, but see this as not too valuable for them. Might that be a mistake for them, that they are basically stagnating themselves out of the market?
I think if they stop there, yes. If they don't continue to develop capabilities, more detailed real-time analytics capabilities, orchestration capabilities that drive appropriate voice of the customer request to understand how the journey experiences are helping customers achieve outcomes. I think yes. I think they're going to die. I mean, journey mapping is very valuable for service design, and when you build solutions the first time, very, very valuable. But if you continue to just focus on journey mapping as a means to transform your organization, it becomes a one and done. You transform once and you never change, and you don't learn, you don't listen to your customers. And I think Mark and I continually, our primary message was listen to your customers, and the way that you listen and understand customers is through journey analytics, and the way you change behavior is through orchestrations.
Yeah, and I think, Thomas, it's some of this comes back to the state of this market, and the fact that it's a fairly fragmented market with a set of relatively small vendors, and no one's really picking up the big opportunity and the big value, and going kind of beyond the sort of, let's call it the easy stuff, right? And now there's money to be made in the easy stuff, okay, for sure. And there's lots of companies that make lots of money in the easy stuff, but it's kind of a commodity game. And big transformation is possible here by looking at a bigger picture, collaborating, and taking on more than some of that easy stuff that ultimately is not going to be high value. Ultimately, you're on a spiral down to the cheapest offering in a commodity market. The interesting stuff is about that big transformational solution. And as Ray says, that requires moving outside the box, and whether that's integration to the broader ecosystem, partnership in some way with the broader ecosystem, building broader solutions. But that's what's required to get to the high value solutions. So.
And I think the new solutions will develop. I mean, we talk about journey analytics, journey orchestration. I believe there's the concept of journey service bus. It's something that will evolve. I think new technologies will evolve. I think the user experience will evolve. I think when we look at how customers that continue to use the ChatGPTs, the clouds, the Perplexities, their experience expectations in terms of not having to worry about screens to fill in and stuff like that, where they just want to engage in a conversation with these platforms, I think will firstly lighten the load on vendors like the Thunderheads and the Kitewheels of having to create complex interfaces that require a lot of QA. Obviously the ability for generative AI solutions to continually adapt, but still have guardrails. And I believe traditional machine learning platforms will provide those guardrails. I think the industry over the next 5 years will see a revolution, obviously on the back of agentic AI as well, and how that will impact it. But I'm excited to see, we're very fortunate, Mark and I, to have solid founders that are going on this journey with us, that are passionate about it, but I can tell you, I'm also excited to look forward to new entrants into this space. It really excites me, and that's why I just can't retire. I want to, but I don't want to because I'm excited to see what's going to happen, and I love working with Mark too. So
you can't play golf
likewise.
all day.
Likewise, Ray. And I just wanted to add something about that set of founders. One of the really rewarding things, Ray and I got together a few months ago now, and came up with this idea. And the first thing we did was reach out to kind of our network in the technology companies in the journey space. And Ray, I think we got just remarkable response from that community. They all sort of jumped on board with the idea. They all saw that the bigger issue here and the fact that it's time to do something about it. We had a meeting a few months ago, and all these CEOs came to Amsterdam and all sat around the table. So just like Ray and I were in our past, head-on competitors with each other, but all came together to collaborate and share ideas and work on how can we kind of make this thing more successful for us all and for the industry. And I think that's pretty rare. I don't think there's many examples of, exactly, co-opetition. There's not many examples of industries where you've been able to pull together that sort of group of competitive CEOs and get them all on board with let's kind of do something for the industry as a whole. So it's been super rewarding.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting that Mark and I talked about it in the first meeting. There was still a little bit of nearly isolation. What can I say? What shall I say? Because I'm a competitor in the room. I've never sat across from my competitor. What do we talk about? Are we going to hide things that we're doing to make us differentiating? But I think, again, the outcome of that first meeting was, I think Mark and I convinced them of the value of them working together. So the second meeting we had in London, fortunate we were invited to the Forrester conference, and Mark and I was at a round table and talked about journeys, and we love Joanna and her team and Martin Gill participating in one of our sessions. The second session was so different. There was none of that distrust. There was like, okay, what are we going to do? And out of that came this concept of journey-led value management, where everybody was excited. And obviously, you'll see when we go live in public and the website is up, and that there's so much content that is applicable to all those vendors and many more. So
that's marvelous.
Our friend, before we dig in a little deeper into that one, our friend Graham has a question that is a bit focused, let's put it like that. So if the customer service industry has adopted the moniker of a CX platform, I'd rather say they usurped it, not adopted it, and failed to deliver end-to-end. How can that be different or shall that be different in a journey environment?
I'm not sure the change is so different in the journey environment. The difference is in an agentic AI environment. I think when we talk about an overarching platform, I think that concept is going away. I think you will have companies that are specialized in elements of customer experience, in elements of journey management that provide specialized agents, and with a co-opting journey management ecosystem and agentic AI ecosystems, I think that we'll find you won't find, in my sense, you won't find big platform companies anymore. You find people that specializes in specific agents that are the best at what they are doing. Like Qualtrics is the best at building a customer experience agent. Okay, you have a loyalty company that's best at building that. You don't have to worry about all the foundational stuff that you have to build to be able to be seen as a scalable enterprise platform. And for me, the excitement is the intelligence that are there and that will continue to develop and improve in terms of these agents connecting and working with each other and knowing which agents I have to use to deliver the outcomes of the organization. So
and it's funny, I would add that in a way the old answer to that question, Thomas, is that's what journey orchestration is all about, right? And it's not provided by an overarching massive single platform. It's provided by an intelligence engine that sits centrally and feeds instructions to the various channels and touch points to keep them aligned and keep them centered on the customer. And that's the world that, Ray and I grew up in and built over the last 15 years. But Ray's exactly right. That world is rapidly changing, where that intelligence agent doesn't have to be a hand-built, crafted set of rules and guidelines from the business, but AI is providing huge amounts of opportunity to get the right data, but also have interfaces to the right tools, so that that intelligence engine becomes much easier to deploy, and hopefully more powerful.
Sounds great.
Now, I'd add one other thing that is just certainly hot off my press. It's actually about a month or so old, but I was reading a report just this morning from Gartner about their hype cycle for CX in banking, retail banking.
Mm-hmm.
Right at the very first point on their hype cycle is something they're calling a customer technology platform. And I think that's almost the answer to that question that we just had up on the screen. That's a vision anyway. It's a 5-year out vision for a single platform that truly incorporates all of those. Now, if it's 5 years out, it's almost certainly going to be completely built on agentic AI and so on. And then you ask yourself, why is it going to take 5 years to arrive? But those are not my predictions. But the first time I'd seen this concept, customer technology platform, as truly a control every aspect, control every channel, and be this central hub, very specifically to focus on improving the customer experience by aligning and connecting all the different bits of the organization. So
and I think maybe the 5-year answer could be for organizations in this ecosystem to participate in that customer hub,
to be there,
service hub, what do you want to call it? You need to find easy ways to integrate into those platforms. And I think a lot of companies are still trying to satisfy current customers while they have to build MCP servers. They have to maximize the use of GravRag and stuff like that. So I think it's just time. But think about the excitement in 3 years from now, where all major players that deliver engage with customer data have an MCP server that can just purely plug into such a hub, as Mark spoke about, or service bus, and the intelligence that can be derived through that hub by data flowing in and flowing out of that. It's kind of blows my mind away. I mean, I've done some prototyping with a company in Toronto on the thoughts of a Journey service bus, and we took some test data, and I tell you, the intelligence that came out of that, because it used GravRag as well as LLM-based insights, it just blew my mind away. So
cool. That is the reason why I believe that two of you can drive that hype cycle to, let's say, a different speed, and you can make it move a bit faster, the roller coaster of the cycling. Huh?
A second ago, you said something, an interesting word combination: value-led journey management. So, which ties back into something we had a little earlier, like the CX people who do not yet or are not yet able to tie what they are doing into business value. So, looks like you're trying to reverse that step by coming from the value proposition. So how do you tie journeys, or how do you propose tying journeys into business values, business value drivers?
Yep.
I think, Thomas, you have to subscribe to be able to see that.
Oopsie. Now we come to the business model.
Touching the business secrets here.
Exactly. Yeah. It's okay, Mark. I was joking, so go ahead.
No, that was a great answer, Ray.
Doing business development here.
But
Go.
my answer, to give you a little flavor ahead of subscribing, Thomas, is that it comes down to having. We've lost Ray, but I'll cover for him.
I'm still here. I'm just doing something.
Okay. It comes from having a mentality and an approach where essentially value is a key metric, right?
Mhm.
That and you go through a disciplined way of ascribing real business value to customer interactions and customer behaviors, and you have got evidence and whether you tests and control groups can help build that evidence that these types of behavior deliver specific amounts of value back to the business. And you assign those to observe behavior of the customer. And then as you start to manage the journey of the customer and track and analyze those behaviors, you get to see that when you're managing their experience, you get this many of these kinds of behaviors, and that can translate to a real financial value back to the business. And you run that in test and control. I was talking to one of our founder members yesterday. They're just about to launch a whole new product, whole new solution really built around their journey product. But they are building in from the ground control groups and test groups and assigned metrics so that from the day one of the journey running, it's reporting out the value delivered back to the business. And basically from first principles of having those calculations done. And it's all about changing the mentality, having the mentality to care about how are we helping and how does this drive value? Now, of course, value has a lot of dimensions itself.
Yeah.
Is this the long-term lifetime value of a customer, or is it this one-off transaction where I'm just trying to get an extra 50 cents on a purchase? Two very different things. And, for us, journey-led value management is this long-term game where you're looking at the life cycle of the customer, because a journey is a longer thing. It's not just let's optimize this interaction and get a percent more out of it. But how do we actually build relationships with customers that are going to deliver incrementally more value to us over a 3-year, 10-year period? And so that, again, it's back to something I said earlier. Truly, we believe that having a journey approach is the way to get to that end result, because you have to see it as a set of connected things and a long-term relationship with the customer. And as long as you work out what the value contributions are along the way, you start seeing that as your key metric and your goal, rather than a feedback score or some other metric that's very hard to translate to real business value normally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I like to
think
make too much.
Interesting thing on that is that again, in the first meeting, and Mark is spearheading that with one of the founders, is where do organizations find a place to go to find use cases, where to show value? There's no place to go. Most vendors hide it away for their own customers. They don't make it publicly available. And obviously what we're trying to do through the Institute is to have mechanisms, obviously anonymized, where we can make a place available for organizations to come and saying, if we invest in this, how can we achieve value? What are the long-term expectations? But also another philosophy of journey-led value management is this is complex and takes time to deploy over a couple of years. But how do we educate the market, and help vendors build solutions that deliver value along the way with the minimum set of implementations data. How can we really give them measurements of value that allow them to invest that value into expanding how they use journeys to do transformation?
No, makes perfect sense. So, I'm glad that I was able to tease a bit of the secret sauce out of YouTube.
And I'm still curious.
Now, for more, go to www.i4jm.org.
Okay, now we have that one again. But I was curious, as you described, that agentic and AI in itself will be a helping hand. And if you put your brains and your experience on it, it can get a real smart approach. So what is your suggestion if somebody is curious and not yet in the mood as a practitioner to buy something he does not know? Where does he get some support out of the existing, let's say, Perplexities, ChatGPTs, Copilots, and so on?
Subscribe to the next CRM and Convos podcast, soon to be released.
Ooh! Now we have the very attractive approach. Subscribe to your
commitment for episode 2.
Yeah.
It's a value exchange.
And so what's funny, Ralph, is that this is exactly what we want to create in the Institute. One part of what we want to create in the Institute is a forum whereby business leaders can actually share their experiences with these tools and what worked and what didn't work. And one of the things we've got, one of the memberships, and in fact, the first one that we're launching is focused on real business leaders, people who care about the value, whose job is all about delivering growth and value for the organization. We're helping them understand how journeys can help. But what we hope is there'll be a huge amount of them helping their peers with their experience and what they found from their early use of some of these technologies. Now, obviously, that's, it's maybe easier to say than do, because people have got to get over a potential competitive field there. But there's such a broad set of industries out there that we feel, and we know, there's a lot of these leaders would like to share this kind of stuff. They go to conferences to share and learn this kind of thing. And we're going to create a forum whereby they'll be able to do that as part of their membership of the Institute. So,
but I'm serious. I was joking, but seriously, I think that I would love to participate in another session on the role of agentic AI in the journey space. So
yeah,
booked. Easy.
Smart.
Easy. For the sake of time, because heck, this hour went fast.
Really.
Let's get into our famous last words. We had a little bit about platforms and size of platforms. Okay? So what I read from your book is that orchestration platforms increase engagement, reduce churn, yada, 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 and will therefore get business results. Now, let's turn that a little around. So, I mean, that needs to be a bit of a safeguard, because it needs to have a bit of a safeguard, because businesses tend to abuse new technologies for their sake and not for the customer's sake. So what safeguards do you suggest putting in place to prevent these types of powerful platforms from creating, let's say, smog for the customers that makes them just switch off?
Well, I think it's really a question for you, Ray, but maybe
I think for me, it's very simple. Focus on your customer outcomes, the ability to measure them, to optimize the experiences, to make sure that you have a happy customer and a happy organization. I mean, that's really what it's all about. unfortunately, people get entrenched in the technologies and the techniques and stuff like that. You focus on your customers, the outcomes, and do whatever you can to understand their needs, their motivation, their intent, and provide them experiences along the way that will fulfill those in a frictionless manner. I think that's a recipe to success. You might use one piece of technology, multiple pieces of technologies. For us, the thing is, you have to focus on the journey as a whole. Don't force customers through paths that they don't want to go on. Fulfill that, what we call the customer's managed journey versus the managed customer journey. So.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's a key role for journey management, is to control that overall kind of big picture. It's one of my regular kind of recommendations when it comes to AI is not to just dive into using it to automate things when those things aren't the right things. All right. And a great use of AI right now is getting hold of the right data and prepping data and getting data together. That's something that is tried and trusted at. Just going into full automation without some guidelines and controls is dangerous. And that's where journey management has a real role to play, to be the sort of overseer to do that. So.
Perfect. Those have been the famous last words of this episode, I think. And we could have continued for hours, I guess.
Yep.
This is such an amazing topic. So still, thanks for today. Thanks for being with us and sharing your insight and wisdom, actually. And thanks for already committing for our next episode.
Yo!
For
Thanks for
everybody
having
else
us.
who's still there, and we didn't scare away too many people if I look at the LinkedIn stats.
Wonderful.
If you think you have an exciting topic to talk about, you know how to contact. And I don't mean Mark and Ray here. Sorry. Contact us, and let's tune in next week when we are talking with we are talking with Brian Sommer about the do's and don'ts of AI implementations. Lightly, he doesn't know. He doesn't know it yet. So, as the dog is already saying, it's enough. Let's go back.
Voice of the customer.